The COVID pandemic is of a particular concern in developing countries. It is create a panic for the last 2 years across the globe, and because of the lack of vaccine availability, the many countries not doing enough to distribute and provide for deprived countries around the world. It is not only an humanitarian issue, but it also may disrupt the supply chain if spiking those pandemic cases in certain economies spread around the world, further disrupting those production and generating the inflation in the market. It hurts the productivity, and over a time, if this imbalance persists, undermine those economic growth. Workers have been hesitant to rejoin the workforce during this pandemic, and with an aging population, retirement are up. Against this backdrop, those who do not change the jobs are often able to secure the higher wage. That what could be possibly wrong things in the biggest economic risk for the 2022. Not all the risk in the same directions. A new wave of this virus has hit the travel, for example, dragging down oil prices. Even so, the combined impact that could still be a stagflationary shock that leaves the Fed and the other central bank with no permanent solution or a preemptive actions. The pandemic has littered with the predictions that did not work out. The most forecasters, including Bloomberg economies, have their base case as a robust recovery with these cooling prices and a shift away from emergency monetary pricing policy settings. This 2020 last year, the pandemic economies were worse than pretty much any economist had forecast. But what was not true in 2021, in many countries, recovery was surprisingly rapid. That the ray of hope for the economy. That's a sign of progress that could be fulfilled, and it can set a new path for the derailed economies in the last year. And Omicron, the sticky inflation, and China's Evergrande slump issues, the emerging market, fresh euro crisis, hard Brexit, and rising food prices all had a tinderbox in the Middle East. In the gallery of risk in this tough situation around the world, and some things might go better than expected. The pandemic has maybe catalyzed the stronger investment plan for the future for many people and might fund us global spending. And the definitive verdict on the Omicron variant of this pandemic, apparently more contagious than its predecessor, and it might prove less deadly too. That could help the world to get back to something like pre-pandemic normal, which means spending more money on services and rebalancing of spending. This boost the global growth to 5.1% from the Bloomberg economies, that the forecast of 4.7% earlier. In that scenario, the demand would be weaker and the world supply problem would likely persist, with workers kept out of the labor market and further logistic snarl ups, and already that the one of the busiest port has seen those fresh lockdown issues. Omicron is just one potential cause. Wages already rising at a rapid clip in the US could climb higher. Tension between Russia and Ukraine could send the gas pricing surging. These cases may get bigger and bigger in the time spent, and the climate change issues also bringing more disruptive weather event. Food prices may continue to rise in this critical time. Not all the risks in the same direction, obviously, and the recent history from the scenario of the stock sell-off shows that how the tightening Fed spells trouble for the market industry. The Bloomberg's report for the China's home sales, construction and prices are trending down. That's the estimation of this reputed organization feedback. They are statistically a national, they set those for the economies and create those charts for the same cases and adding to risk with this time around the already elevated the asset prices, and the index is near those territory, bubble territory, and the home price is accelerating away from the range suggest. And Fed, those could mean a crash landing for the emerging market, and higher US rates typically boost the dollar and trigger those capital outflow, and sometimes currency rises in developing countries. Some are more vulnerable than others. The 2013 and 2018, it was Argentina, South Africa, and Turkey that suffered the most, and also Brazil and Egypt call them as a 5 at-risk economies based on the range of measures compiled by the Bloomberg economies. While the energy crunch should ease in 2022, the other two problems may not. The zero COVID strategy could mean Omicron lockdown, and with the demand of weak and financial constraint that has been generated in these cases, and the property construction field, which drives about 25% of only China's economy, that's the cases, and may have further to fall. The solidarity among those leaders who back the European project and European Central Bank activism to keep the government borrowing cost under control helped to Europe to weather those pandemic situation, the COVID crisis, and the Eurosceptics gain power in those bloc key economies that could shatter the calm of European bond market and deprive the ECB the political support required to respond in this scenario. And the negotiation, if breakdown based on the Brexit flare up, the uncertainty would hit the business investment, undermine the pound, boosting those inflation and ending the real incomes. The superpower war is the worst case, and those scenarios short of that include those sanctions that would freeze those ties between the world's two biggest economies, and the collapse in those production for the semiconductor industry in Taiwan that are crucial to global output to everything from smartphone to car manufacturing industry that could boost the economy, global economy in the electronic sector, and that are influence the people who are using those applications, those devices, those gadgets. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.